Hey, Brad, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Chase.
Stoked to have you here, man. Do you mind starting
Yeah, I
kind of
think.
with your background before we talk about your presentation today?
Yeah, for sure. So my background is in web design and digital marketing. I've been a web designer since 2009 and freelancing, helping agencies and businesses and organizations with their marketing and their emails and their branding, things like that. I also am kind of in the e-learning space as well, teaching web design tutorials, marketing courses, and things like that, using the modern tech and tools that we have, specifically with email marketing and sales pages and things like that. So that's kind of my bread and butter. I use email marketing for my business, both for my client based business, coaching, and for courses. So I'm kind of neck deep in this stuff myself. And I like to teach and pass on kind of the tips and the things that I learn that work along the way.
Love it, man. And hopefully this is okay to say. And I know you're very modest, but I think when we talked last time, you said you have like thousands or tens of thousands of people that have actually gone through your course or your program. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So I have about 25,000 email subscribers. Uh, a few thousand of those specifically went through my freelancing and marketing related courses. I'm also on Udemy and I have about five or 600,000 students over there. So I get a significant amount of eyeballs on the work that I create. And I'm pretty grateful for that.
No, I love that. Well, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, dude, the floor is yours. I'm really excited for what you have to share with us today.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. So yeah, I just have like what I'm calling 9 bite-sized email marketing tips. And this works for agency owners, e-commerce, and consultants. So if you're a service-based business owner, you sell products, things like that. So, if you're using email marketing to sell your stuff, that's what this is about. This is my unique take. I like to say, what I recommend is guidelines, not gospel, because there's a million ways to do the same thing. And so what I've found is, you find what works for you. And if you experiment and whatever experiments work, you kind of double down on those. And so for me, these are experiments that work for me and have also worked for students and clients that I've helped, and I've recommended using these sorts of things. And also as somebody who is subscribed to way too many email newsletters and I'm on way too many email lists, I can see what's, cringy, what's tasteful, what's effective, what sells, what doesn't. So I kind of see it from many different angles. So these are kind of my 9 tips that I would recommend at least considering. Some of them might really resonate, some of them might not. So let's do that. So the first tip is don't micro segment, macro segment. So what do I mean by that is because we have the option with these really cool tools. I use ConvertKit and there's Drip and there's a whole bunch of tools out there. I know that you use a specific tool. What was that one again?
Klaviyo.
Klaviyo. Yeah. So Klaviyo, you can tag, you can literally monitor and document every single interaction that the subscriber has with your emails, from link clicks and all these sorts of things. And you can create a bunch of triggers and blah, blah, blah. Just because we can doesn't mean it's that valuable or doesn't mean we should. So for example, when I started with ConvertKit and I was able to start tagging, like they clicked on this link 3 times. And then so probably that means they're super interested in this because they read this blog post and this blog post. And, because they've read 14 articles, I should change their lead score to an 8 versus a 6. And people who are an 8 are way more likely to buy. And it never really led to more sales, at least in like a significant, um, the data it wasn't significant enough. Maybe if you had a monster email list where doing more micro segmenting might help, or if you're selling specific products that, say in this case, are based on hair color, okay. But for the majority of us, tracking micro and creating micro segments of like how many articles they've read, or if they've shown interest in your personal blog posts versus your, corporate stuff, or your this or that. It's just like, because you can play with these things and you can go so nitty gritty, it doesn't mean it's actually valuable. So what I recommend instead, because segmenting is important, is macro segment. Things like what's their industry, what's their level of proficiency, what occupation, what products have they purchased, are they a customer, are they not a customer? These are really meaningful segments, because you can send an email that says, hey, thanks for buying product A. This is how you get the most out of it. Also, you might want to check these things out. And here are some reviews on these recommended products based on that purchase. That's obviously a meaningful segment. Saying, hey, you have purple hair. So does my cousin. That's really awesome. So, by the way, you should buy this book. Or hey, you've read 14 articles on my blog. That's great. You're spending a lot of time reading. Maybe you want to buy something. It's like, are you watching me? What's happening here? This is creepy. So I like to say, just forget the micro segmenting, just macro segment. Keep it super simple. Are they a customer? Are they not? How many things have they purchased? Is there a recommended next offer? If you're offering to lawyers or, B2B, B2C, these are meaningful data points, and that's good enough. But don't go so into the weeds because it doesn't really make a difference. So that would be my tip number one. It might ruffle the feathers of some people because maybe micro segmenting in certain capacities work, but I think that that's an edge case. And I think you need to have volume for that to have meaningful significance in the data. If you got a list of 2,000, 5,000, even like in my case, like 25, 30,000, microsegmenting doesn't really do anything valuable. So that would be and that's my opinion on it. It might, maybe somebody's like mastered this and it works well and I'm missing out on something, but I don't think so. So that's tip one. Tip two is increase engagement in your emails with meaningful personalization. So this piggybacks off of the first tip, which is like, if you have macro segments and you've got meaningful data on the person, then you can have meaningful personalization. So personalizing isn't use their first name. And like that's maybe back in the early days of email marketing, having a first name was like a real big surprise. But anyone receiving an email, it's not a surprise that you're using their first name. They're not surprised. So that's not meaningful personalization. That's just maybe standard. What I mean is if you've got macro data like proficiency or occupation, or if they're a customer or not, you can meaningfully personalize the emails from the subject line to the body copy to the call to action. So I have an example here of like an email template, how that would look personalized. Now, I specifically didn't choose like what it looks like in ConvertKit because this works in any tool, any email marketing tool that you can do some personalization with, like, short codes or tags, things like that, custom fields. So attention, proficiency, occupation might translate to attention, full-time web designers. So this is data that I would use because I sell courses and live programs and boot camps to web designers. Some of them are new, some of them are full-time, some of them are side hustling. So I could say attention, full-time web designers, and then have an actual personalized email after that. Now, you could also, depending on the person receiving it, say attention, part-time graphic designers. And then, I could customize and personalize what's in that body copy based on who's receiving it. So, hi, first name, I have a new opportunity for proficiency, occupation, full-time web designers who are struggling with struggle. That's another macro data point that I would collect. What's your biggest pain point as a proficiency occupation? What's your biggest struggle as a part-time graphic designer or a side hustling software developer? And they would say this. So in this case, full-time web designers, maybe that person chose in the drop-down menu of my form, hiring virtual assistants. They're full-time, they're doing everything by themselves. Maybe virtual assistants is a pain point for them. So then I can personalize that email and based on that data, give them a next step. So it could say, if they are full-time web designers, struggles with this, give them this call to action, or this call to action if they're this, or this call to action if they're this. And you can get really, complicated in that sense. But actually taking time to personalize the emails in a meaningful way, that can actually make a huge difference. And I've seen that. So if I'm sending out a course. So I have a course that helps freelancers get clients. Now, it works for web designers. It works for copywriters. It works for virtual assistant agencies. It works for anyone with a service-based business. But if I'm sending out a subject line that says, my course for people who have clients and want more clients and are generally a service-based business is open. Would you like to buy that? It doesn't mean anything to them. Maybe it applies to them generally, but it doesn't resonate. But when I say attention, this, let's say if I only wanted full-time people, so I could say, okay, segment them by full-time people only, but they could be web designers, graphic designers, software developers, virtual assistants, copywriters, SEO agencies. And then I swap out occupation for whatever they have on file. And then craft the marketing message for the course, which works for all of them, but the message is very specific to them, their pain points, and what they're looking for. And that works. That actually works because it's a personalized email based on data points that you have. And so that would be tip number 2. And now, Chase, if you have any questions at all while I'm doing this, feel free to just like pop in, or we can, talk about them at the end too.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Cool. So tip 3 is segmenting your subscribers in the very first email. So this is a good way of, if you are the type of business or person or website that only collects, say, like a name and email in your opt-in form, which is generally a good practice because the more data points that you ask of the subscriber or the potential subscriber, the traffic, the less likely they're going to subscribe. So if you just put email, I don't know the industry standard percentage, but let's say it's 30%. And then if you ask for first name and email, then maybe it's 25%. If you ask for first name, last name, email, then you're dropping down to say 20. First name, last name, email, phone number, occupation, and pain point. Okay, now you're like maybe going to get 10%, 8%. And arguably maybe those are really good quality leads, but you might be missing out on actually a volume of leads who are actually good leads. They just don't care for your questions. So the way around that is keep it simple in the opt-in, just like get the email. This is what I do in many cases. Just get the email. In the very first email, it's an email that's basically, welcoming them and then checking to see how you can best serve them, or a question that gets the macro segmentation data that is most valuable to you. So for me, it's knowing if they're just starting, if they're freelancing, like if they're just totally getting started as a freelancer, if they're freelancing on the side, so they got some clients, or if they're running their own business full time. That's really meaningful data. If I only get that, then that's good, because I can say, here's some free tutorials to get familiarized with me. Here's my introductory course. Here's my live bootcamp. And I can segment it based on that. So in the very first email, the reason why you want to do it there is because you get higher engagement on the very first email. That's the highest engagement. You can see it when you look at your data of like, if you send out 100 emails over the course of like a year or something, the open rate of the first one is the highest, and then it will wax and wane as it goes down, as it, funnels down. And so if you want to get segmentation quickly, but you want to get their email first, do it in the first email. So that would be my way of keeping the opt-in rate high and then getting that segmentation as quick as possible when they're most likely to let you know. They might not click it. That's okay. You can have fallbacks in your messaging if you don't have the segments, and you can ask throughout other emails and have different link triggers kind of peppered throughout. But doing it right away is great because it also increases engagement. Google likes that when they open an email and they engage with an email. So Gmail and these other email service providers, when you interact with an email, it generally shows that you're interested in receiving that email, and it might land in the primary tab, things like that. So that would be my third tip.
Awesome.
Tip 4 would be to create dynamic email content based on who's reading. Now, this is kind of like tip number 2, which is meaningful personalization. That was generally with the subject line. You can obviously do that in the body too. This is kind of expanding on that. So creating dynamic email content based on who is reading. So let's say the subject line is 3 copywriting tips for occupation. So if you know that the copywriting tips are valid for any of the occupations that are attracted to your messaging or your website or your email list, could be lawyers, could be accountants, could be, whatever other industry or occupation, and you know that your copywriting tips are 100% across the board applicable, but you don't want your subject line to say 3 great copywriting tips for your business. You want it to be more specific. 3 great copywriting tips for lawyers. You might see lawyers because you're a lawyer. The agency owner would see agency owner. The accountant would be accountant, and so on and so forth. It's still the same 3 copywriting tips, but it's just, targeted specifically in the subject. Now, what you can do is dynamically change what's in the body copy based on who's reading. So in this example, I'm checking. Again, I'm just using kind of a template here. You can do this in ConvertKit. You can do this in Klaviyo. You can do this in Drip. You can do this if you can track data with custom fields and tags. So let's say, here are the 3 tips. I just have 3 quick tips there. And then at the end, in like the PS section, I check to see if they are a customer. And then if they are, I'll say, hey, it looks like you haven't joined our copywriting course for lawyers. Use this link to save 25%. Else, meaning otherwise, they're not a customer, consider joining our monthly copywriter club for lawyers. It's just $9 a month. So you can change what the call to action is. You can also change what the body copy might be if you wanted different tips for different occupations. If occupation is lawyer, if occupation is agency, if occupation is accountant, you can change what the tips are. Those are just some ways to create dynamic email content rather than catch-all email content. Your emails will have more mileage and more engagement and effectiveness because you're sending out, in fact, you're writing one email that is maybe 6 different emails and then multiplied with everybody who's receiving it. So it's just way more powerful. So that's what I do as well with my onboarding emails, with my email courses, with my onboarding for courses. And if you're doing side offers or upsells, you can personalize that messaging right in the email.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. And that's a powerful one because this is a sales email, I mean, you could do it with engagement emails as well, but for sales emails, it's way more powerful if I get an email from someone that says, our new copywriter club for, course creators on Teachable, is open. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But then maybe you get our copywriter club for, email marketers. It's the same copywriter club and we all swim in the same circles. Having cross industries is fine, but the marketing message is specific.
Yeah, I can only imagine, right? The engagement 2, 3, 4, 5 times what it normally would be if it wasn't personalized.
Yep, exactly. And I think this is more valuable than, say, an A/B test. So what a lot of people will do is with an A/B test is they'll write 3 copywriting tips for your business as A and 3 copywriting tips for, let's say, service businesses. And you'd test like the one, you have the control and the test of the one variable. And then you'd go with the winner and you'd hope that that was actually meaningful data. It's rarely statistically significant unless you're working with large numbers. Doing this is way better, blows it out of the water, in my opinion, because everybody gets a personalized email. You don't need to A/B test. I'm A, B, C, D, E, F, G testing, and the right message is going to the right person. So that's my take on it.
That's awesome.
Number 5 is, I hate this one. Or I love this tip. I hate why it has to be. It's don't bury your freaking unsubscribe link. It has the opposite effect that you think. As an email marketer myself, I look for this stuff. I'm aware of this stuff. I know the frustration and I know why it's happening. I'll see my wife open up an email and go, I can't find I don't know why I'm getting this email. Like I can't find, where's the unsubscribe link? I'm getting all these terms and conditions and deadlines and whatever. And it's all like, light muted gray on white. I can't read it. It's like 8 pixels font size,
Hmm.
and none of the links are highlighted or underlined. And I have to, and they're using vague wording. It's not like unsubscribe. It's like this: edit your subscription preferences here.
Hmm.
And then it takes you to a page where you have to enter your email address and then choose which things you want to unsubscribe from and then confirm it. And then they tell you it's going to be up to 2 weeks to, and that's like the worst case scenario. But anyone who does that usually does the rest of it. Um, it would be considered a dark pattern. Dark patterns are where you specifically make the user experience deceitful, confusing, or difficult to so that it benefits you rather than the customer. So, not being clear about something, having them click on a button that gets them to purchase something that they didn't realize they purchased, making it hard to unsubscribe, so that they just give up. And then you keep sending them emails because they can't unsubscribe. You're holding them hostage. Um, it's bad. It's stupid. And that's why Google has done things like you can write from your phone in the inbox for Gmail, just say like unsubscribe from this newsletter. And then Google will like mark it as spam or something, filter it out, and then make the request themselves automatically, because companies do this crap. It's garbage. And I've done it before in the past. Like, I think I have a couple emails from earlier sequences where I was like, oh, I don't want to lose my precious subscribers. I worked really hard, or I spent money on ads, or I did this, or I did this. I'd really like them to stick around. And then when I realized, like, the people who are hunting for my unsubscribe link are never going to buy from me. And they're most likely going to mark me as spam. And they're going to tarnish my reputation because I pissed them off. So just give them an out very clearly, make it obvious, make it clear. Those who want to unsubscribe, let them leave. It's like the equivalent of welcoming somebody into your house party and then them being like, you know what, it's not for me. Sorry. Where's the door? And you go, I don't know. Where is the door? Maybe it's over there. Maybe it's over there. And then you lock it from here. And then they have to go through a maze. And it's just like, it's obnoxious. So don't do this. Make it super clear. There's also laws in place, like the Can Spam Act. You have to have an unsubscribe link. It has to be clearly marked. So it's actually could have potential legal ramifications if you don't do it properly. So just put your frickin' unsubscribe link at the bottom, make it clear, give it its own separate line so you don't accidentally press, instead of edit subscription settings, you don't accidentally press like upgrade my plan to the highest tier. Like, get it the frick out of there and just unsubscribe. Don't be
Yeah,
a crybaby about it,
yeah, on that point, right? Like, obviously, unsubscribes, everyone gets them. You get them, I get it, we all get them. But if people follow the tips 1, 2, 3, and 4, you're going to be able to mitigate the unsubscribe. And it's
Yep.
really about being clear on when people sign up, like what they're opting in for, right? Setting the expectation up front, plus following your
Yep.
tips 1 through 4 will minimize the number of opt outs people get. But if
Yep.
people want to opt out, to your point, let them opt out.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. The better your message, the more clear it is, the more specific it is, the more relevant it is, the lower your unsubscribe rate. And with all of these, doing segmentation, macro segmentation, meaningful personalization, you're not sending, let's say, 20,000 emails that are all the same. You're sending 4,000 emails that are specific, 2,000 that are specific, 5,000 that are specific. You're sending a total of, say, 20,000 emails, but they're all very unique. And so the pockets of unsubscribe rates are actually going to be really low.
Yes.
Versus catch-all marketing message that doesn't really resonate with anyone. You're just going to have a higher unsubscribe rate. And then if you're making it hard for them to unsubscribe, you're just going to piss them off.
Yep.
Tip number 6 is to make your pitch dynamic based on who's reading. Same thing. I'm all about hyper personalization. If you probably can tell with the last few tips, it's all kind of centered around, for the most part, hyper personalization for the sake of having a more meaningful email. I want my emails to be as close to if I literally wrote to that person and did some research on, who they are, their interests, or, if they've purchased stuff. Like, if I were to send you, Chase, an email, I would want it to not be just like a canned email that I would send to just any person. I'd want it to be based on what we've talked about, based on who you are, based on a number of factors. And so there's nothing better than an actual human email. That's always going to have a better reply rate, because people can tell if it's generic newsletter email or a person. You feel more obligated to get back to a person who wrote you an email. But when you're sending marketing messages, you can't do that. And you actually need to use a newsletter tool because it's, legally required. You can't just like spam people personally, which is different from sending a cold email, but that's outside of the context of this. So what I like to do is make sure that my marketing emails, as much as possible, are as human as possible, which means things like obviously using their name, if you've got it, their occupation, meaningful macro data, not the creepy micro data. Like, you've read 14 articles and I can tell you have purple hair. Like, that's weird. But hey, you're a freelancer struggling with hiring VAs and you've purchased this course. Great. That's awesome. So what I can do is be specific with my email and specifically what offer you should be getting. So if you've already purchased my course for full-time or for part-time freelancers, I want to acknowledge that. And I want to give you a unique next offer based on what you've purchased, or something maybe you've let me know, like you were full-time, you're part-time, you're struggling with this. And I could pair up that struggle or a data point with an offer or a product. And so it'd be like this email, it's the same email. I write one email, 3 copywriting tips for freelancers or lawyers or agency owners or SEO agencies. And you get the tips, but the pitch is totally dynamic based on who's looking at it. Our beginner copywriting course to help you land more freelance gigs is on sale for 25% off. Get it now. We've opened 3 spots for new law firm clients who want to double their website conversions by Q4. Book a call. So I'd actually have what you see on the front end is nice, neat, and tidy. On the back end, it's like a huge list of, here are the 10 different offers I have, let's say, with the combinations of occupation. And so if I'm like wanting to work with part-time freelancers, I don't want to talk to them on the phone to do like a big coaching session. I just want them to join the course and the community that's affordable to get them up and running. The lawyer who's full-time looking to like, hand off their marketing campaigns, totally different. They don't need to join my course. And it would be embarrassing if I offered them that because it's not relevant. But I would work with them one-on-one or coach them through productizing their services or whatever. So I want to make sure that the offer that they get on the weekly newsletter email is really relevant to who's reading it. So
yeah, in this case, sorry to cut you off. In this use case, it's really great because it's like the majority of the content is the same, right? So say you have 10 different occupations, it's not 10 different emails. It's just 1 or 2 lines or a small section that's unique, right? So for us in e-commerce, a lot of what we do with our clients is we do one campaign for men and one campaign for women, right?
Yep.
And for men, we'll show like the items for men first, and then the second half of the email will be the products for women. Yep. And on the women, it's women's first, men's second. And we're basically just rearranging blocks and maybe changing a few small call to actions in copy. So like, 80% of the work is going to already be done when you write that email for the freelancers, right? For the lawyers, all you have to do is change the PS. So I really like this because it's very efficient.
Yeah. Yeah. And it works for, like, what's great is that obviously you want to, niche down and have your target audience. Great. But there's going to be segments of that. And sometimes you have a bit more of like a varied audience, and writing a catch-all email is just not really going to work. And so, okay, then you can write one email, but then create the variables that you'd like to change. And then the different blocks that are going to swap out based on who's reading, the call to action, the next offer, even the content of the email, if you wish. You can personalize that. You're effectively sending one email, but whoever reads it just like automatically gets their own personalized version of your content. And that's awesome. I think everybody wins that way.
Yeah, agreed.
Tip number 7 is to repeat your call to action in your sales emails. So don't just have like one. I like the rule of 3. So in art, in comedy, in theater, in music, Even in sales, there's a thing called the rule of three. And it's basically where you repeat things 3 times. I know in this example, I've only used 2 examples, so it's not like a hard and fast rule, but it's more of a guideline, where you repeat something 3 times to either create repetition, create a pattern, create tension or repose, make it memorable. So you'd want to repeat your call to action, let's say 3 times. Now, if it's a short email, 2 times is enough. One at the top, one at the bottom. Because what people do in emails is they kind of just skim really quickly. And if it's a longer form email, and let's say they start reading, but then they get bored or they get distracted, where'd the call to action go? Am I going to scroll to the top? Okay, they're gone. Swipe, delete the email. Whereas if you have call to action right at the top, real quick, hey, in 2 weeks, we're doing this. The sale is happening or this product's on sale. Check it out. Here's the link. Here's some more information, maybe some graphics or some product images or whatever. And then they start scrolling through. The further away they are from a call to action link, it actually can create an issue where they can't find it or it's not easy to click. Maybe they wanted to click it to open it up to read later. If you don't give them that ability, then that's a potentially missed sale. So I like to have at least call to action right away. So you're upfront. Hey, by the way, this email, I'm offering this thing. With that said, here's the meat and potatoes of the content. And here's the link one more time, or a third time, depending on the size of the email.
Awesome.
So a real simple tip, but something to consider. Now, this is kind of a automation, a semi-advanced automation. And depending on the tool, they might do this differently. Some tools might automatically prune cold subscribers and kind of take care of this. ConvertKit, the tool that I'm using, you actually have to manually prune your cold subscribers, which generally I think is a good thing because you don't want to accidentally automatically just delete subscribers from your email, because maybe you have a campaign, like a whole segment of emails that you forgot to drop into a campaign. And so they go cold because you're not sending them emails by accident. And now they're cold subscribers. And if your email tool is just deleting them, then you might be actually deleting valuable emails. So I think manually doing it is the safe bet, but you could still create automations that will remind you in a way to trigger to remove actual cold subscribers. So it'd be something like when they subscribe, and I have in ConvertKit an automation that does basically this. So have they engaged with any of the emails in the last 30 days? That's automatically checked if they're a cold subscriber or not. So if they're a cold subscriber after 30 days, we could remove them or drop them into like a cold subscriber re-engagement campaign. This is just a simplified kind of chart or flow chart. But, let's say if they're active within 30 days, okay, keep emailing. They've passed the test. If they weren't active, remove or drop them into your, re-engagement campaign. Hey, it looks like you haven't been engaging with us lately. Here's like what we've been up to. And here's like a great promotion that's happening. We'd like to have you back. Or here's a free thing, whatever. And then you leave them and you check them again in the next 30 days. Remove if they're cold, keep emailing if they're not. Check again in 30 days, remove if they're cold, keep emailing if they're not. And it's just basically, it's like pruning. Like if you have like an herb garden or something like that, you want to like prune it. It makes the whole plant healthier and your open rates healthier. It makes your data for the email service providers, when they see like you get scores and like actual scores for your email list and the email domain that you're sending from. If you have like a bad score from people marking you as spam, not opening, it actually has a negative effect. So pruning your list in this sort of way, this is a simplified version of it, will help you to have a healthier list.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'll add is, so for example, like in e-commerce, not a lot, but a small percentage of people, which could add up to being a lot, they only buy during Black Friday or Cyber Monday, right? So you don't
Right.
want to have these people auto be deleted. You want to be able to manually do it, and you could then do a check of, did these people purchase between this 1 or 2 week period of Black Friday and Cyber Monday? And if
Yep.
so, keep them, right? Don't send them emails throughout the year. Wait until that 2 week period or that 4 week period when they were alive last year
Yep.
and mail them. You're going to make a lot of money. So I don't have the actual stat, but let's say like 5% of those people, for us, we work with lists that are 5, 6, and 7 figures, right? So
Yeah.
someone has 100,000 person list and like 5,000 of those people don't ever open outside of that few week period. You're missing out by deleting those people on a huge number of
Yeah.
potential buyers. So that's the only thing I would add. And that's why I'm for doing this manually as well, because I want to do that final check.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's, I know I've heard people kind of complain that cold subscribers aren't manually handled with say ConvertKit, but I'm sure this is a lot of tools. But I think you actually have to think of the implications. Like you can't just have a catch all. Oh yeah, we'll delete your subscribers in 30 days. I think that's really dangerous, especially in that case. Cause yeah, what if you make all your money in one specific promotion or season and then everybody goes cold because you haven't engaged with an email in the last 30 days because I don't care about your content other than the specific time frame.
Right.
Like I'm not there to build a year-long relationship with you, but I like having a connection so that I'm going to be notified of your promotions.
Yes.
So especially at the times where they're most engaged. And so, maybe instead of active within the last 30 days, it'd be like purchased something during our biggest campaign, purchased something during these windows of time. Yes. Okay. Keep emailing. No, send like a re-engagement campaign with like a side promo.
Yes.
And then you could do something like that.
Love it.
And then finally, tip 9, write as if you're speaking to one person, not an audience. So this is more of like a writing tip. So I know we've done all this personalization. So you might think, oh, it sounds like we're writing to one person because it's super personalized. But you have to think like you're putting that data into a machine and then it spits something out. So if you're putting crap in, crap's going to come out no matter how you dress it up. So actually write like you're writing to one person. So if I'm writing this email, that's like a newsletter email or a sales email or a tip or a pitch, you can tell when it's just written with the writer thinking about an audience. For me, my background is in performance and theater. So I've like performed on stages, done musical theater stuff on stages and music on stages to an audience. And so my doing a script. So when you do like a cold read of a script, or you're singing like a piece or a song, or say doing like a musical number or dance or something, when you're doing it for one person or say the mirror as you're practicing, it's very different than to like an audience of 100, 1,000, or let's say with our emails, 5,000, 30,000, 100,000. So if you're writing to this audience, you're putting on your face, you're putting on a show, you're changing your persona in a way because you're like, ooh, a lot of people are reading this. And so you just change. And it's like a psychological thing. But in theater, you want to have the energy to like excite a whole theater of people, an audience of people, but they also want to be able to connect with you individually. They want to feel like you're speaking that to them or you're connecting with them individually, especially if it's like music or song or something. The same goes for writing an email. If I'm reading an email and I'm like, this person wrote this to 30,000 people and I'm just one person just peeking my eyes in around the corner. Whereas if it sounds like they're literally writing to me, though I know it's an email list, I enjoy the reading much more. And I'm more likely to engage and do what it is they're asking. So for example, here's like a non-personalized, meaning like I'm writing this to my audience versus I'm writing this to an individual. It's still going to my audience, but it resonates different. So subject line, newsletter number 32. Hey, everyone. We're excited to send you all of, we're excited to send all of you our 30-second monthly newsletter. In this issue, we'll be covering a few important topics such as X, Y, and of course, Z. Read it here. Cheers, Brad. Versus, thanks, Johnny. Hey, Johnny, I just published a newsletter this morning and I thought you'd really enjoy this one since we dig into pricing for freelancers, a topic you've shown a lot of interest in. Read it here. Yeah. So, and maybe with thanks, Johnny, I think I actually meant to say like, hey, Johnny, you've been a subscriber for the past 3 weeks. I really appreciate that. I published a newsletter. Since you've expressed interest in this, I think you'd really like it. Check it out. P.S. Let me know what you're working on this week. That's like, I'm writing to Johnny, but maybe 30,000 people are receiving it. And when I write like that, I get a lot of replies. And if I don't want that, then I won't invite the reply, but it just totally lands different. And I've had people say, I know you're writing this as a newsletter and this is probably an automated email, but it sounded like you're writing this to me. And I just felt like I needed to write back. And so I'll actually respond back and say, yeah, it is automated, but I wrote it as if I was writing it to you, Johnny. So I'm glad that it worked.
I love that. One thing a buddy shared with me recently that I absolutely love is when he writes emails, he actually opens it up in his Gmail and he puts
Ah,
in his mom or his friend or his coworker, and he actually types the email out as if we would respond to your mom or your friend or your husband. And just I've tried that, and just being in that mindset, in that frame, it's
yeah.
actually really interesting, right? Like if you're within your ConvertKit or your Klaviyo or your Drip
Yeah.
or whoever, you're knowing that this is going to everyone. Where if I'm just in my inbox for Chase at Chase Diamond, and Brad, I'm writing to you, it's
Yeah.
like, hey Brad, I just published a newsletter, right? Like you really could see the right hand side of this, that's very personal.
Yeah.
That's something that he told me a couple of months ago that I've been
Mm,
trying. I'm like, wow, just that framing and that context
yeah.
psychologically has made all the difference.
That's a really cool point. And like that takes it like from a theory of, okay, think about one person to actually, you know, starting it that way. And the context in which you're writing changes it. And that's a good test, like that, do it that way. Open up a draft in Gmail and then put like your wife or your mom or, a close
Yes.
friend. Cause I've actually done this before where a friend, and I don't really have friends on my email list. Like I have an email list of an actual audience members. But some friends might have joined early, or in some cases, I have friends who are like my target audience. And I'll be like, yeah, you know what? Like I'll give you the course for free, or I'll give you a friend discount. I don't need your money, but I'd like to be able to help you. And I'm set up to do that. So here, check it out. And so they're on my email list. And so I've like had replies from, say, this friend who was like, hey, I got your last email. And I was like, what was the last email? And I would look and I go, oh, like they received that. Like I feel weird because I wouldn't write, like I don't talk that way to an individual person. Like I clearly wrote that with like a weird persona that I don't know. I was like, so I felt like almost embarrassed, where I was like, oh, I wish you didn't receive that email because that's not like my bag. That's not quite how I would write it. Whereas if I just would have opened up that same email to read that post or to check out this new course opening or whatever, and wrote it out to buddy so-and-so, I would have changed it. And the person reading it would have been like, they probably would have resonated better versus like, oh, another marketing email from Brad or whatever. So it's a good point to actually write it in a different context to one person. Just don't hit send.
Exactly. And actually, as you're talking about that, I was thinking like a lot of companies do have personas, right? So maybe they have this persona that's Brad, and this other persona is Chase, and this other persona is Emily, and then Jamie, right?
Yeah.
Like in your two of the email you're writing within Gmail, just write that person's name for that persona, right? So like, or maybe you even have someone on your list that's that name, and you just copy and paste their email in, or maybe you even make like if your domain is brad.com, it's brad at brad.com, chase at brad.com, where you just send that actual email to yourself, but you're
Yeah.
writing it for that persona. Like I think there's a lot of really cool stuff there. And
Yeah.
I'm getting a bunch of ideas even from this slide. So thank you.
Yeah. Cool, man. Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And then the more you practice that, the less you need to do that exercise to do that
Yeah.
extra step. But I know for just to kind of quickly go back to that kind of theater performance acting metaphor, whenever I'm like, I'm terrible when a camera's on and I need to like perform something. And I do it too when I film course videos and I have a camera here and filming like a promo video. If I just have a person sitting in front of me and I'm like, hey, thanks for coming by. Let me tell you about this. This is what it is. This is how it is. We're opening the doors on this day. It's this much. I'd love to have you on board. Here's how you get started. It's like, if you were to film that, I'd be like, that's really good. That's really natural. I look comfortable. I sound natural like myself. And I feel like someone would be able to empathize with that message. As soon as the camera goes on, it's like, hey, everybody, Brad Hussey here. And I'm like, this got weird. Like it did performer version. So it's like but the more you practice. So at this point, I turn on the camera. I don't like nervously go into weird performance version of Brad. Like I can imagine just one person and it's natural to me now. But same with writing emails. If you're not used to like this, write to one person, okay, make it really make the context as close as possible, the environment as close as possible to writing to one person. People have done that with the camera issue, printing out a picture of like a close friend's face and cutting it out and taping it to the top of the camera, or putting it right in front of the lens and then cutting a hole out like in the middle of their face. So you're looking at that person's eyes and it's weird and creepy, but you can almost imagine like you're talking to that person and you kind of evaluate, is this how I would speak? Is this how I would perform this? And so you can do a similar thing to your email, just, as an exercise, and then you can get away from it.
Dude, I love this. This is fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. For anyone that's listening, anyone that wants to ask you a question, and anyone that wants to check out your courses, what's the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, totally. The best place, I'm going to say, given the context of this, would be right here. I have a site called 100salespage.tips. That'll get you on my email list, but specifically what you get is 100 sales page tips delivered over 100 days. So you get a tip a day, similar tips like this, but for your sales pages, for your marketing pages. And then once you're on there, you're on my email list, you can hit reply. That's probably the easiest way. And then you get some more value. So I've had a number of people sign up for this and it's a lot of fun. They're real cheeky emails with one simple actionable tip for improving your sales pages. And this comes from me as both a marketer, a writer, and a web designer specifically. I think a lot of sales pages are garbage in terms of how they look and how they function. And I think I can help people fix that. And so this is just like my simple, cheeky way of doing that. And then you could just hit reply to any of the emails.
Amazing. I know I'm on one of your list. I don't know if I'm on this one, so I will go sign up. And thank
Cool.
you for being here. I'll make sure that the link is hyperlinked under the video. And thank you so much for your time. Of
Oh, thanks, Chase. I really appreciate it.
course. Cheers, man.
Cheers.